Man, I'm just kind of taking this guy apart. This is the Y-Start GIN02, which I got the other day, and I'm actually super impressed with just how drop shitty this sumbitch is. So, I'm curious to see what's actually on the inside. There isn't a whole bunch of talking going to be going on. I'm just kind of taking things apart. T6 construction on the clip and the scales. Not my favorite cup of tea. No, sir. I don't like it at all. Grease underneath there for sure. Where'd my cloth? That's what I used to clean my glasses with. I don't want to get oil all over that crap. Aha. It's closer than I thought. If y'all haven't seen the inside of an access lock before, that's basically the barrel spacer you got there that's attached to these two springs. And you pull it back to disengage the lock. And the springs basically force that bar to go forward so that you can, have the thing locked all nice and tight by itself. Alright, there's a whole bunch of green goop on the inside of this motherfucker. Hey, looks like my suspicions were correct. This is running on bearings, which is pretty neat. Using a little bit of a spudger. There we go. What I will say, most of the time, I wouldn't bother trying to do this on access locks. They're kind of a giant pain in the ass to put back together. But I'm here. So this is what we gonna do. Alright, I got a couple of barrel spacers that are actually on the inside here, and I'm sure those are T6 instead of TH because of course they would be. And I'm gonna pull these springs out of the scales. Here we go. What is interesting about this is usually on access locks, once you pull this guy back, there's like a larger area down below for you to actually remove the whole lock bar. This thing doesn't look that way. I think I have to actually remove these outside studs with some torque screws. Yep. That looks like it's going to be the case. I see. So it screws in on one side and has the post on the other. Bit different construction, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, there we are. There's steel ball bearings in there. They got an ass load of some sort of axle grease or whatever on them, so I'm going to clean the crap out of that. Because they run alright. But I think it'd run a lot better if I just used my standard knife oil of KPL. Go ahead and clean this guy off nice and everything. Come on out of there, boy. There. This is basically the first Axis style knife that I've had that's actually run on bearings. That's why I was so impressed with how smooth the thing was. This thing's got a D2 blade on it, which is pretty damn sweet. And hell, its price even rivals some Gonzos at around like 20, 22 bucks, I think I got this thing for. Which I am super surprised with. Also, one thing that I would really like to point out, and it's something that I kind of appreciate that most companies don't do, is I like bearings, but I actually like the cutouts for them milled into the scale rather than cut into the blade itself, because that just makes me feel a little weird having a super thin area around the pivot. Let's see. I like lovely Q-tips so I can clean these guys just a little bit more. Get out all of that weird green grease. Yeah, see, it's got all sorts of lovely remnants left behind there. All right. Now that we got some stuff cleaned out, I will start to reassemble this little duder. Grab a couple of my tried and true implements. I got some Loctite in the stick form. I got some Tough Glad, which I actually really enjoy using on D2 blades, since they're, you know, another less than stainless stuff, because yeah, it just puts a nice dry film over it, and when it's in its liquid form, it actually does a pretty good job of dissolving tape glue, which is pretty annoying to deal with, but, you know, one of the most common things that people end up cutting with knives, getting tape glue and other cardboard remnants up on their stuff. I'm actually pretty impressed with how the construction of all of this is done. It's a lot better than I was first expecting, that's for sure. But all right. Also have my lovely KPL for our knife pivot lube. And I honestly do have some others. There's some blue lube from Benchmade, which I honestly haven't actually used on many knives so far. But I have used to refine some micarta handles, which I'll show you in some upcoming knife reviews. And blast from the past, I still have quite a bit of Militech 1, which is what Benchmade used way back in the early 2000s. I think they switched over to using their own stuff. If I remember right, there was some weird craziness with the owners or producers of Militech 1, and so they decided to sidestep some of all that PR disaster and just make stuff there on their own. I mean, Militech 1 is literally more or less designed for firearms. It works kind of okay with knives, but to implement them absolutely correctly, you need to apply a very little amount and then apply some heat and then apply a little bit more and then heat again. And there's quite a bit of heat. Generally what they want you to do for firearms is go ahead and apply it to the gun, and then you fire off like a clip or two or magazine or two of ammunition, and then apply it again, which, you can do it with hair dryer, but no one really wants to end up trying to do that on a knife. It just seems a little funny. Yeah, ready. Let's go ahead. Yep. That wasn't where that goes anyway. Here's the pivot, and I see that it is a D shape, which I absolutely applaud. There we are. It makes doing any of these disassemblies much easier. Of course, I don't quite want to do that yet, because I'm going to want to get the handle scales together. It's always fun trying to figure out how to place everything back together. And these access locks aren't exactly designed to be the easiest to figure out things. They're fantastic to use in every day, but maintenance on them is much different than liner frame locks, or hell, even back locks, which I also really don't like to disassemble very often. It is interesting that it does support both right and left hand carry of that pocket clip. Oh, no, not quite. I was gonna say it seemed a little interesting, since you would have to come in here, completely disassemble the thing, and change these posts out. It just seems like a really strange option. Okay, well, I'll put on the full sets of bearings. Just a little bit of knife lube. Toss these guys together and then get these itty bitty little screws on there. I only want one of you. One at a time, ladies. Shut up. please go in your hole? Thank you. Alrighty, that's all attached. And one of the bearings has fallen out of place. And now he's flown away. Yup, I gotta look for him. Because I believe it has fallen to the ground. This is why I have giant neodymium magnet. That way I can just kind of brush it across the floor. And boom, there it is. Doesn't help with ceramic bearings, but almost all other knife hardware is good. Alright, there we go. It's seated. So, next up, I got the blade. Just a little tiny bit of lube to interface with those bearings just a little bit better. And then I can just straight up slide this guy in, which is actually a little easier than a lot of Axis style knives. So I'm all about that. Yep, pivot color went in super easy. And now eventually I'll figure out. Yeah, well, I don't think it really matters which way it goes, so there's that, and then here's the other half of the Axis lock. Like I said, this is a bit strange since most companies don't create their things that way. I'm okay with that. Okay, cool. Now you see it all flops around because it's got no spring tension to be able to actually deal with the blade. I think I may have tightened it way too much. There we go. All right. So yeah, I suppose next up I will slap these springs back on there. These are the what they call the Omega springs inside the Axis locks, where it'll loop over the bar right there, and that's got like a little protuberance right here, as you can see, and that hooks back in the handle scale. And then it's all hidden underneath whatever handle scales are actually on it. In this case, G10. Come on, buddy. You can do it. It's generally not super difficult, but that one apparently wanted to prove me wrong. So there's that one. Can't forget there's another one on the other side here. These guys' tension seems to be fine. On some of the Gonzos, actually, if I get down to this level, I will actually bend the springs in just a little bit to relieve some tension. But, yeah, that's looking pretty darn good there. So here is the handle scale for the set. I've noticed A little bit of grease on the outside of the G10 for the pivot stuff, so I'll just go ahead and clean that out. I think it's a little bit on both. But yeah, from here, you know what? We'll go ahead and do that. You can see there was already blue Loctite of some sort that was on it. I'm going to continue that trend. This stick form is much easier to deal with than the standard liquid form that's really designed to be poured on much larger bolts. There we go. Let's just screw this little deuterino back in. Also, let me switch back over to using my T6, which is what most of the hardware on this thing is. There. So here's the body screws. I'm just going to add just a little tiny touch. Doesn't need much, but you know, just something for it to actually hold on to. And the same thing over on this side. And goddamn, I'm an asshole. A little bit of trial and error. This is a stupid idea, but I'm going to try and do it anyway, where I'm going to leave the screwed inside there and remove the pivot so I can slap this handle scale on. Get it through those weird posts for the raised pocket clip. There it goes. Alright, and then try to shove the pivot back through, which might work, probably won't. Sometimes it really helps to pull back on the access lock when you're trying to shove something through, like this pivot thing here. I don't honestly know exactly mechanically why, but I do know that it works a lot of times. You don't want it super extremely tight, and you just want to back that up just a little tiny bit. I'm talking like micro turns though. Yeah. Dude's nice and smooth. Looks like the blade is basically centered on it as well, which is fantastic. So, okay, let's go ahead and slap the rest of this on there. There it goes. little bit of lock stick now. In a not so great direction, but should be easy enough to deal with here. This is kind of an interesting way to have a raised pocket clip that's not all bent like most of them are, which it does a little bit more to emulate the titanium milled pocket clips, which is probably what they were going for. As long as it works, it's fine, but that doesn't make it super convenient if you wanted to swap the knife over to something left-handed. This particular one doesn't, but if they were to attempt to do any of these elsewise, then yeah, they would probably run into some stuff. Alright, well, I'm going to pick this up instead of keep it on the floor. Come on, screw, work with me. It's good enough. I do seriously wish a lot of these companies would completely back off from using T6 screws. Alright, so I'm getting a little bit of lock stick basically where it's jamming back. I wonder if that has to do with how tight the pivot might be. Yeah, it seems to be kind of the case there. Yep. Alright. Feels super good. Maybe just a hair of blade play. Another little micro turn. Yeah, that's super nice. Alrighty, so we got one other thing that I end up doing with these. Since this is using a D2 blade, which is not so much in the way of stainless, it's more for machining of other steels. It's what they call a tool steel, rather than me, which is a steel tool. Alright. Yeah, this doesn't take very much at all, because it goes on wet, and this is actually, it's a whole bunch of like nail polish wipes, but they're lint free, so it does a really good job of distributing this stuff. I want to get the backs there, and then this guy right here. And it smells quite a bit like WD-40, but yeah, essentially just let that guy sit and have the alcohols and whatever dissipate off, and then you have a nice film that helps protect them on there. And yeah, well, thanks for joining me on this quite mellow, more PBS Learn to Paint style video where I disassemble and take a look at my first axis lock with that's running on bearings. I know some saws that have come out recently, like the Terminus do, but I don't have any of those, and I do have one of these. It's a pretty sweet little piece. Rather impressed for the $22 that it is. Yes, thank you very much.